Hey everyone, this is Grady at SUBOVERLAND, and in this video I'll be doing a little walk around of my '99 Chevy Suburban. Let's get right into it. So this is a 1999 Chevy Suburban, 3/4 ton with the 454 big block. So it's a 7.4 liter V8. These don't come around too often. Definitely have built up more half-ton models just in general. And then I guess, during COVID there, when we were doing a bunch a month. We've kind of, downsized a little bit since COVID. We were doing more of these 90s ones. And, geez, I guess during that time we had, I remember, I don't know, probably 5 or 10 of these big blocks go through the shop. So definitely familiar with them. They're a great drivetrain. These 3/4 tons just in general I've always really liked. And so a quick story on this one. I had a guy walk into the shop one day, and he was like, "Hey, I got a Suburban. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure. Tell me some details." And so apparently this was his dad's, who had passed away years before. So this thing had sat for quite a while just at his car lot here locally. And it was just sitting, and his dad used it to tow a sailboat. Yep, sailboat in Idaho. I know. We have lakes and stuff, so apparently people use the sailboats. I wasn't familiar with this as much, but so I got there, and it fired up. It ran, actually, barely. It was not running very good, but it ran, and he's like, "Hey, there's a catch. You're going to have to take the sailboat too." And I was like, "Oh, okay, what the heck?" So he talked me into it, and I hooked up the sailboat to this thing and drove it home. So I got a sailboat with the deal, and I actually just sold that yesterday. So I don't have any, well, I have a picture I'll have to include in this video, a little before and after. But so yeah, that's the story of this thing, how I ended up with this. It ran here, it drove, but it had, bald tires, horrible tires, everything just, battery, obviously air cleaner, just all the little basic little maintenance things. I've just been kind of slowly getting at it. So I think I've definitely done an oil change. I think I've changed the fluid too on it, all the other fluids. And then we did the suspension. So we do a KYB shocks on these. They're the Monomax. And then I had these tires laying around. So these are 285 75 16s, Falcon Rubitrex. And this is on the stock wheel that we painted. And then the paint on this thing is pretty bad. I haven't tried to buff out. It'll buff out in some places for sure, but it's got a lot of that. Windshield's trashed. This hood is horrendous. It had one of those bug deflectors, so it might, that's going to buff out a little bit there. The front had this big old what's that called, a bull bar, and it had, see how it's kind of pushed in there a little bit. So I removed that because it was rattling like crazy, and brought out the bumper a little bit. So that's kind of the cosmetic stuff I've done. And then just clean the interior. There was a lot of stuff in there. This guy's dad had kind of lived out of it, I think. Not lived out of it, but he had a bunch of his fishing stuff, and he probably camped out of the back. And so it needed some love. There we go. Got the seat. It's all torn up. This is one of the first years they started doing heated seats. So they don't work, but they had it. Full power everything, which is cool. And then, you know, the carpet is just dirty. It just needs a good detail. Back seats are in really good shape, actually. They were never really used, it looks like. Headliner's in good shape. These are fun. You know, they have, you know, I don't know. I just like the styling of these. It's got 208,000 miles. And it's 8-passenger. Leather. Door panels. Have I done anything? None of the locks don't work. You know, that needs to be fixed. That needs to be fixed. It's dirty, and they clean up a lot of that trailer brake wiring. Like I said, windshield. What else? I mean, all the speakers are shot. It just needs to be run through. There's just stuff on here that, you know, needs fixing. And so partly with this video, I wanted to give you guys an idea of sometimes, you know, this isn't our typical condition. I just got this because it was so cheap and it was just here locally and it just made sense. But, you know, we do have to deal with a lot of these little things, and that's included in our pricing. So it's just good to show you guys a before of this. So yeah, like I said, I just wanted to kind of give a little overview of, you know, this vehicle here. I know I didn't do a great job with it before because it looks pretty good now, you know, with our lift and tires and everything, but this thing stock just looked pretty hideous, and I'm glad that we were able to get it. And the interior, I know it's definitely not awesome. There's stains in the carpet still and all that, but I spent a decent amount of time just cleaning up this thing and getting out, you know, all the stuff that was in it. It was used as like a storage unit essentially. So it's come a long ways just from our, you know, little bit of work. But another, you know, I'll go into like the mechanics of this, so you can kind of get an idea of also what we do. So I bought it, like I said, it hadn't been started forever. I think like 5-6 years maybe. So the gas in this thing was horrible. It just smelled so bad. It was just bad gas. And so I picked it up, drove it home. It was good, shifted fine. Engine sounded really good. And then I just started driving the thing. So that's what I usually do. You know, I did an oil change because it had an old oil, and, you know, changed some fluids, and just started driving it. You know, it needs to learn how to be a car again. It had been driven forever. And it had a little bit of a whine in the transmission. A lot of times on these 4L80s, from first to second, they'll have like this kind of like a whine. And it's pretty common, and usually it's not like mission critical. And they last forever with that whine, and you know, you can read about it. It's kind of like a torque converter related thing, and it's not really an issue most times. I've driven a bunch of these with the express vans and, you know, the 1-ton vans and stuff like that. So with this one, I kept on driving it, and then I started getting louder, and then, you know, it started to grind. And sure enough, transmission. So I'm going to have to replace the transmission in this thing. So reverse is starting to slip, drive, you have to rev it to get pressure, and it's just, the tranny is not happy right now. So it's not really that drivable, unfortunately, until I get a new transmission in. So right off the bat, I'm going to have to put a transmission in this thing. Transmission's about $2,000. And then, you know, labor to throw it in there. So luckily, you know, things are really cheap on these older ones still too. You know, $2,000 for an HD, you know, transmission, like a 4L80. That's great. I think it was $1,900. So under $2,000, you can get a rebuilt, you know, transmission with a warranty. Fantastic. So I had to deal with that. So we're having to do that. Also, with the gas problem, I filled it up, you know, and, you know, just decided to run gas through it, which is fine a lot of the time. Some people will say never do that and drain it first and whatever. I went the route of just mixing it through, and it was going fine. But then all of a sudden, the tank, I started getting a leak from my rear tank. And I was like, what's going on? So it acted like almost, sometimes if someone's replaced a fuel pump on these things and they don't seat it correctly, then it'll, you'll slosh around and drain off the top. So dropped the fuel tank, drove it down enough for had to empty it out. Sure enough, there is a crack in this steel fuel tank. I've never come across that. Maybe you guys have, comment below, but I've never had a cracked steel tank on these old 90s ones. I've just never dealt with it. So I had to buy a new tank. Luckily, it was like in stock in, I guess it was next day, next day shipping. And I think that was like 150 a Turner bucks. So cheap. I mean, that's just insane. I don't care who you are. That's some great priced parts there. So with that, because we dropped it, I wanted to throw a new fuel pump at it too. So put a new fuel pump, and so it has a new fuel pump, new fuel tank, new fuel, and what else am I going to have to do with this thing? Oh, and then during all of this, I'm driving it, and and then I hear like a catalytic converter rattling pretty good. So I'm like, okay. So I get underneath there, and the muffler is kind of loose, and I kind of diagnose it as more of a muffler. So I take it in the muffler shop, and I ordered up a Flowmaster for it, because I like, got to hear that V8. These are a really good sounding engine. If you haven't heard, a big block Chevy, it's great. So anyway, so I wanted to put a muffler on the thing, so I took it over to them to weld it up, and lo and behold, catalytic converters are needing to be replaced. So it wasn't throwing any codes. They were still functioning to a certain extent to not throw a code with, the O2 sensors are reading correctly and all that jazz. But one of my cats, the innards of it had come apart. And if you've ever seen the inside of a catalytic converter, it kind of looks like a honeycomb. It's that rare earth metal. I forgot what metal it is. And, it heats up the exhaust. And so it can be more efficient. So that's, the idea of the catalytic converter. So mine had broken up inside. So imagine like a honeycomb. And broken up inside, and had actually been lodged, back inside the muffler, probably in the tailpipe. And so one half, bank 2 of my engine was not breathing very well. So what do? Order some new cats. These catalytic converters were a little bit more expensive than like the newer ones, which I was kind of bummed out. It's kind of a unique design for these GMs on my particular, big block, having 4-wheel drive and all that. So I forgot how much on that, and then I just installed those the other day, and then took it down. So it has new catalytic converters, cat out with new exhaust in the muffler, new fuel tank, new fuel pump. It'll have a new transmission. All the fluids are obviously going to be done. I still need to do the tune-up, which it's definitely more involved. You got, cap and rotor, and it's kind of buried back in there. So these aren't the funnest thing to work on. The 350s are easier to work on. And then I've got all this interior stuff to do. None of the power locks. Anyway, the list is lengthy. And so with a car like this that we buy, we have, our little computer system, and I'll be driving it, and then I'll just looking around, test driving, and I just will add to our to-do list. So our to-do list on this thing is very long, but hopefully I will, have it here, and I will have the video after, and you can kind of see what it turned into, because I've taken, a vehicle in this similar condition and turned it into, a sub-overland. So hopefully you liked that video. Sorry it got a little lengthy there, but hopefully under that explanation, you'll understand, kind of how these things start out and how they, end up. And you can look on our website and Instagram and stuff for how they end up. But yeah, I like these old 90s are great. 3/4 ton with the big block. These are really fun to drive. This actually very comparable to a 6.0. So the next year in 2000, they started doing a 6.0 and an 8.1. The 8.1 replaced this guy, and the 6.0, if you look at the torque and horsepower specs of a 6.0 and a 7.4, they're actually close to identical. Their power bands are quite a bit different. The 6.0 is a higher revving engine, so you got to get up into those higher revs for that max torque. And then the 454 is a lower revving power band there. So that's the main differences. But 6.0 versus 7.4 as far as towing, they tow very similarly, I would say. Comment below if you have any other opinions on that. But yeah, this will be a fun project. If you want to see anything on this vehicle, let me know, and maybe I can address that in the future videos. But thanks for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. We'll catch you on the next one.